everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button for me if you would. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. And the link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. We've got John with us again tonight. How you doing tonight?
Agent John's doing good.
I like
Or
that. Agent
correspondent,
John is doing good.
or correspondent. I don't know which one I am. Right? You know, my latest way, Keith, to say it is that we could be like a field assistant to
There you
the
go.
CAP's name. How do you like that?
There you
Yeah.
go. Absolutely. I'll agree with that. That's a good way to style it. Absolutely. So we're up here talking about the dummy corporations again. We're doing a second part of the review of a video I did about 8-9 months ago. And hopefully what we're doing is expanding upon the original video and showing you the correlations that come along with our more recent research and stuff, and the previous research that I've been doing over the last 8 years. That's a lot of the terms that we added in last night's video from the NASDAQ summary of definitions, investment, money, currency, those kind of things to help show that the firm and the corporation, that dummy corporation, is what it's all about. And we're acting in a capacity of that under a presumption because we're doing the similar functions. And everybody believes that they can keep track of their own bank account and everything. And that's part of the problem. You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to have a bank account as such. You're supposed to have a trust account and let the bankers do any of the currency transactions. Go ahead, John.
Is that why we have a firm name?
Absolutely. So that you can appropriately invest in that system if you want to. And it is a way to pay taxes. You can pay them through that government. You just set the terms. Like I did before when I was doing the sales and marketing. I was the one writing up my side of the contract. In that, I went ahead and included 10% right off the top to a local organization of whatever program I was working with, the community leaders. I was working with community leaders long before this last city council meeting. They were having lunches with me at one of the local restaurants on my bill, and then I used it as a donation part. I already had receipts that they could then use for their tax write-offs, and boom. All the taxes were taken care of in the contract itself. They were prepaid. That's what's told me for a long time. Well, how come everybody else is going ahead and paying them afterwards? See, you get that check, but then you turn around and fill that 1040 out, and in a lot of cases, you end up still owing because they didn't take enough out of your taxes or out of your check. So isn't that's what, and we'll do another review on another video I did, prepaid expenses, and go over all this same kind of stuff again, showing you how it correlates with insurance, another prepaid expense. And that's what I keep telling everybody. It's all about the taxes and insurance. Those are prepaid expenses. Well, if they're already prepaid and you're the benefactor of that beneficiary trust in public, why are you paying? There's something wrong with that logic there. So we're going to get back into it. Let me pull the video up. John, you got anything? Go ahead and speak your piece now. Let's see here.
Yep.
Okay, where were we? We got it on mute for now. Let me find my place. No, it's before that. Where was it?
All the hidden stuff too. It's like when we get our driver's license, they just mail you the card, Keith. Where's the contract?
Yeah, and that's something else that we've noticed is changing over the years too. Some of these people are now coming forward and they're telling us that they're actually having them state an oath. So that's right up there with what I was telling you about that driver's license, the motor vehicle operator's lease. The certification is false. And it's false because I never took an oath of office to be able to perform the functions of public office. Now, just because they've got them stating that oath, I still question whether they're making a handwritten statement of that knowledge and then going forth knowing that that's what that oath is to perform the functions of a public office, and therefore they're some kind of official or agent of the municipal, state, or federal government. See, I don't think
Yep.
they understand that.
And the S5 could be itself, Keith, part of a larger stack of paperwork, but I still don't know that one for sure. That's just a
Well,
book
that's
I read years ago. I don't know.
yeah, and the SS5 is the Social Security application, and then the SS4 is, you would think it comes prior to that. Why didn't anybody fill out an SS4? Because the SS4 is the one where you put the clarifications of the grammar so that they know that you are the executive of that name. And you're making the executive decisions and not something as a trustee under administration through that Social Security. That's a large part of it that's left out. That's why I say you don't have to get rid of the Social Security Administration and all that. You don't have to operate in any other way than what it was designed for. If you know how it's designed and become that official, you have to take on that performance of the functions of public office, which includes that 12 presumptions of the court. You're now subject to that administrative court, and for public service, you have certain duties and obligations. That's public service is a public trust.
But we still don't know what our obligations are. That's the problem.
Well, no,
It's not like
that's why I say that's the important part about knowing the 12 presumptions of the court. When you know those 12 presumptions, that's where you can uphold your own plenary powers and explain to them your self-governance and your very own aspect objectively of public service itself in that trust as a qualified trustee when it's required to owe no man anything but to love one another. So to love one another is to fulfill the law. So you're not here to destroy any law. You're here to uphold the law as a public servant yourself. But there's a greater truth to that aspect of public service than the one that you get paid emoluments for.
Oh, okay.
So you inherently do your good deeds freely. That's your public service. And nobody should be denying that. That's the problem. Everybody's got their hand out, expects to get paid. If we truly live in a world that's abundant and prosperous, and all we have to do is replenish it, isn't that reaping what we sow? So just keep on sowing so you can keep on reaping. That's called following the seasons, the natural laws, and not some manual scriptures, even the biblical scriptures. Those are only parables and examples of how one can live. And the importance of it, again, is the foundation of the true benefit, the knowledge. It takes upon an aspect of teaching and learning. So once you learn how to fish, the true benefit is not just that you can feed yourself for a lifetime, but now you can teach others how to do that.
Okay. So as long as we ward off some of the false assumptions about
Correct.
in court, like that we're an agent or a vendor or a shareholder of the plaintiff, which we're not, right?
Correct.
So.
Correct. Absolutely. Know your true station in life. Know thyself. Heal thyself. So let's get into it. This is where we left off yesterday. Stuff, people. The next one. The dummy director. Remember, I told you it's about learning how to give a directive.
Let me get rid of this so people can see this reading better.
You're not going to do the things required. You're going to let them know.
Dummy director.
You're going to let them know through a communication, a conversation, a message or something, however you want to put it, as long as you understand the concept, that all you're doing is conveying the message of how it's supposed to go from point A to point B. You're going to direct the routing. Nobody's taking and learning how to do the routing. That's how you do this stuff. You direct the routing.
A dummy director is a member of a board of directors. Okay, so a board of directors is a minimum of 5 people, right?
See, this is that incorporated status. Again, if you're not organized to perform the corporate activities under the laws of the United States and do not have that permit to do business, what good is that DBA in the state? There are similar duties and obligations. It's parallel. The law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions. So if you're required to have a permit to do business, specifically perform the functions of public office, which is the term trade or business. So in your trades or business, you have to have a permit with an oath. This is logic and reason, folks.
So what is that board of directors? Well, you have several boards that do various directives. So now we're talking about plenipotentiary powers. And there's one board that regulates them all across the boards, all jurisdictions. Federal government means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service, that little circle with the R in it, registered agent, the buffer, and the Postal Regulatory Commission. And now you know where the true international law comes and how the nationality, despite the state's sovereignty in that nationality and them being the buffer, now the United States is the buffer with the international forum. Now you have the two liable parties, and you're just the benefactor. Who acts and votes on behalf of a non-board member.
So you are a member, but you're not on the board. So what member are you? Again, you're either the principal, the trustee, or the beneficiary. And remember, it says the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner. Therefore, you are both if you're the one. You're neither if you're the other.
So the dummy director is yourself, again, the investor, benefactor, grantor, and the non-member is the beneficiary named.
And again, my terms weren't absolute correct at the time. Remember, the beneficiary is the record. You're the actual member in reality, and it's just the paperwork. The benefactor is the other member, and he's never named. He's a non-board member. He's not privy to the minutes of the meeting unless he demands them so to settle the accounts.
The beneficiary named in the manual, and in that manual, it's particularly implied that that manual applies to the man.
When in fact, it's just a legal name. And just like the given name in its correct grammatical expression, it is still merely just the descriptor, just the name. It does not define the actual living soul.
With those same data elements. Although they are called a director, a dummy director is only a figurehead. What tree did Jesus curse? They exercise no real control over the company because the company itself is fiction. There is nothing to control. And they have no financial interest in it. Again, the financial interest is the beta corporate male. Again, the male, female on paper, in paper. It is not the spiritual credit. That's where the true interest lies. And that interest is lying in, again, equity. If you want equity, you must first bring equity. So,
yeah, they don't have any real interest in the person other than the fact that it was a descriptor and it turns out it's a defamation of the living soul in every sense of the word. The entity is an entitlement. Were you so created to have a title? That's why people scream for kings, and yet here everybody wants to be the king and take upon a title. That's the controversy. Again, we're supposed to be pass-throughs. Again, in my opinion.
When you see these documents that have all these comments, knowing them to be inventions, fabrications, and fictions, you've got to correct it. That was never meant to be. It was never meant to be qualified, as in qualifying as a director, when in fact you don't actually qualify, because that's not what you meant. Dummy directors are also known as accommodation directors or nominal directors. You direct the name for the accommodations. A dummy director takeaways.
Nominal directors, in other words, the nominee, another term equivalent with trustee. So again, it's still just a presumption of the facts presented to the courts. That's the legal fiction itself. And again, remember, it was assigned a social security number. It itself is an assignment. And that's why you sign the legal name as signed.
A dummy director is a voting member of the board of directors who acts on behalf of some other non-board entity. So the person isn't part of the board, it's the beneficiary. And you're operating as a voting member of that same board in the political realm by registering to vote. So that you can direct all these persons to quit using plastic straws and paper wraps, to turn around and use paper straws and plastic wraps, you big dummy corporations. Dummy directors are most often seen in the context of startup companies to act on behalf of management until permanent external directors are found.
A stage of development. Again, it tells us repeatedly throughout all these different interactions and all this research that I've been doing. It's all uniform throughout all the jurisdictions. Every aspect of this commercial system permeates every aspect of your life, in everyone's life, some way, somehow. They all operate basically the same thing to take advantage of those different aspects through conveniences, comforts, security, safety.
They don't see the offshore director because the offshore director hasn't come forth, and rather he sent somebody forth to act on behalf as an investor, as a director, and therefore they put him down as an obligor using a number referencing a record, a reversion instead of the original version. It was translated. Dummy directors are effectively figureheads and exercise no real control over a company. They let the company be because they know it's not worth.
They have no real control over the company because, again, it takes a board of directors, and that board of directors is operating to do the voting and all of that on behalf of that non-board entity without even their knowing. So again, I urge everybody to rethink this concept of voting and everything and what you're really a part of. Because if you think any board of directors is going to vote on your behalf when it's to their benefit to siphon everything they can according to their interpretations and their security and their safety and their partners and their people that do the things for them, because they're all getting paid to do it as well. Every last one of these is becoming Hitler's willing executioners for a buck.
Anything because it's not real. Understanding dummy directors. A board of directors is an elected group of officials from those who elect them, and you've given up your selection for an election by registering to vote that represent shareholders. The board is a governing body that typically meets at regular intervals to set policy.
So that's saying that if the non-member they're representing, even though he has no real interest, he's a shareholder. So what kind of interest does he have?
Corporate management and oversight. This is the court when it's in session. This is Congress when it's in session. The court ceded their jurisdiction to the United States. For the state ceded their jurisdiction to the United States. It's called succession because they suck. Every public company must have a board of directors. Every public company must have a board of directors. As a private entity, you do not have to have a board of directors, and therefore you can present yourself in a court.
And this is why people have a problem with public and private definitions. They think just because they use that term private, they've got it all figured out and the courts have no jurisdiction. No, you forget the corporate aspect. You must have a board of directors to hire an attorney to make a representation, which is a base presumption of facts that the court will accept until they're properly rebutted with supplemental or superior facts. the only way it happens. It's not a matter of guilt or not guilt.
Keith, bonds represent debt, and bondholders usually have no voice in or control over management of a corporation.
Correct. That bond is evidence of a debt against the United States. 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States, and it starts out, includes all bonds. It's got a treasury seal on there. Full faith and credit is incorporated. All you have to do is direct it. Problem is, people don't understand you have to direct it to the interest of the United States on the account of the United States to fulfill its obligations under full acquittance and discharge, so that no person shall be held liable in any court due to mistake, which is the entry into equity, wherein I get to create the remedy. And that is, I agree, no person shall be held liable in any court. The liabilities are released. All parties are to be made whole. This is a matter of clearance and settlement, so that the remainder may be reverted back to the principal in a merger in a new name, a private trust, distinctly different and has its own international judicial account already with the Postal Service. That's the contract with the Postal Service. They're the ones that are supposed to hold that title. They're the ones that control all entities. Freedom of transit shall be guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. Well, that's the territory of the Union. That's where all those contracts extend. From the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union. Look at Articles 26 through 31, I believe. Those are pretty much the specific contract terms for anybody that wants to accept them and partake of a fiat currency system of their own. So anyway, we'll get back onto it.
If you feel that power, have that knowledge. But if you don't, that court will try to assign you an attorney, saying that you have to have an attorney, and that's because you have a board of directors. Or it's there to represent a board of directors. Or in fact, if you don't have a board of directors, then you can't be represented in equal consideration in front of another board of directors. It's something that's out of scale or out of balance already. The scales of justice in that situation do not and will not work, period. Some private and nonprofit organizations also have a board of directors. Some, not all. It's not a requirement, okay? Again, it's a matter of development.
Yeah, remember that always, folks. It's a matter of development.
You appear at the age of 18 and have a full-blown corporate entity going for yourself, so now you can start investing and making all kinds of money and be a millionaire. It's a development phase. Same thing with the country. It doesn't start out as a country. It starts out as one man. He has to build a family. That family has to build and build and build and build. Dummy directors are most commonly used by startup companies that are going public. That is their intent, is to go public. To meet regulatory requirements, they establish a board of directors by electing a number of nominee directors to serve temporarily. This is
that are going public. So again, it provides the premise that it's private and going public, but doesn't mention the fact that it's still a corporate presentment.
The enumeration at birth. They intend you to go public as a full-grown man, and to meet regulatory requirements, they establish a board of directors by electing a number of nominee directors to serve temporarily. And this is because you choose them hospitals as public entities, military branches that are not posing as peaceful institutions with that black and white flag or that black and white sign. Therefore, they are meeting the regulatory requirements of the military to establish a board of directors on the corporate side and act on behalf of management until permanent directors can be found per man entity. So when you become of age, you sign that SS5. Social Security says it's permanent. You cannot rescind it. Bullshit. Permanent. Learn the terms. It's right before you. Per man's entity. If you don't actually have an entity that is a public figure, then it is private and it is unseen. It is only the public record that is seen by the public. That's the bastard that needs to be reformed, resurrected, and merged into a new name, a good name. As stand-in members. Stand in. That means you are standing. You have standing of a board. Dummy directors would experience a conflict of interest if they sat on board in the state in which the court sits. They are part of the board for any length of time. This is
Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals, along with the administrative law judge and the judicial officer, is the very definition of the Judicial Office Department, a neutral and independent forum within the United States Postal Service comprising thereof.
because all board members have legal fiduciary duties to the corporation they are representing. The creditor, the one that subsidizes them, as they are the subsidiary, they are representing the United States by their succession to that United States.
You understand that part? See, these states do not and cannot create their own funding. Congressional authority only to lay, collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. Only the authority of the United States press to coin and mint money. That's why all the documentation that state issues, like I said, are negotiable instruments under the Uniform Commercial Code, and as holder in due course under the securities laws, you have the right to enforce them. The enforcement lies in the United States. Obligation and other securities of the United States includes all bonds.
And it was
Board
after
members
the
are expected
Lieber
to act in
Code
good faith with
when they started printing the green money, Keith.
Say what?
It was only after 1862, after the Lieber Code,
Yep.
that the government started the green money systems. You know.
Right. They made a national currency, whereas before it was under the various different colonies in origin, and then it spread out to the various different states, and you had various different currencies floating around. So after the Civil War, when the corporation came in, they brought in their one corporate monies.
And confidentiality, and in the best interest of the corporation, not the state or the board of directors. So again, you hand the interest of the corporation back to the corporation, which is the United States. You hand the interest of the duties and obligations back to the judicial office. Special considerations. Remember, we talked about general, particular, and special. As in special is species, and specifications, as in the man of the spirit. Usually, the board, once it has been established, includes a mix of company insiders and qualified outsiders, telling us there is no centralization. Includes a mix of company insiders and qualified outsiders, telling us there is no centralization, and that the District of Columbia, having their lease of the land, is the fictional entity that everybody's praising in this profit of man, this commercial system known as war rants and battles of the forms, with expertise in associated fields, as in that's where you have your wars, is out in the fields. You don't have them on the mountainsides, you have them in the fields of the valleys.
Interesting, huh, John?
Yeah, that is.
See, that's that synchronicity, guys.
An inside director is a member who has the interest of major shareholders. Age of majority is when you go public. Officers and employees in mind. That is your intent, in mentality, permanent. And whose experience within the company adds value. So if they keep taking you to court and saying you're not paying taxes and you're committing all these atrocious offenses, then they're saying you're not adding value to their company, and that's what they're trying to get you to do. Outside directors, while not involved in the daily operations, should bring an objective, independent view to goal setting and settling any company disputes. Settlor, benefactor, investor, inventor, grantor. That OR means a lot. Striking a balance between the two is critical to the success of the board.
And this is where I want to mention a term called trial balance. See, this is what these trials are all about. It's a trial balance. We'll do something on that someday. Trial balance. Everything, it's one of my favorite words, balance. See, when we think about ball, B-A-L, and then A-N-C, it's A-N-C is that definitive suffix that says that the word or term, condition, or whatever before it has a certain characteristic. And when we think about ball, that's like a globe. It's a ball, not a circle, but a ball. And so you can put a plank on it, as many people have done, and use it as and balance on it. This is more the perspective I have when it comes to balance, rather than a long beam that you have to have one person on each end. Each of us needs to learn how to balance our own life. Once we do that, we can walk together, helping in the balance of life itself, becoming more and more natural rather than manual, a further separation from the spiritual.
It's critical to the success of the board. Striking a balance means nothing to me. I'm already in balance as far as I know. I mean, look at me. I got my sea legs, put me on a boat, and I still stand just like I stand on the land. I have standing both on land and on water. You suppose if I stood on a boat and walked from one end of the boat to the other, I could placate that I actually walked on water like I walked on land? We really have to think about how those scriptures are placating things and how you interpret them. The language that they're translated in, everything. Examples of dummy directors. In 2013 case involving who to call a Chinese company charged with fraud and forging important documentation because they were documents of import through the canal, Panama Canal. A judge ruled that directors appointed by the Delaware-based company, a Chinese company based in Delaware, don't tell me we have an issue with China, we're in total agreement with them, were culpable in the fraud. Independent directors who step into these situations involving essentially a fiduciary oversight of assets, as it's said, what is done is what ought to be done. There is no.
This is one of the things I pointed out, folks, a number of months back. I don't know, maybe even a year ago. I can't remember how long it's been, but I had a gal up here on my panel that wanted to talk about the vaccinations and stuff and how it was important for everybody to get vaccinated because we were a danger to those that were unvaccinated were a danger to those that had already gotten vaccinated and this and that. And so one of the things I did was pulled up some current contracts that America has with China. You can't tell me that there are things in this system that you refuse to recognize while placating and fear-mongering some bullshit. You have to understand there, again, through reason and logic, like we've been recently discussing with Socratic logic, there's an order to things. And when you know certain elements that exist out there that kind of destroy your argument for vaccinations and stuff, then you either have to, you either end up proving yourself to society as an idiot or somebody that's open-minded and willing to learn some more. One way or the other, truth needs no defense. So that's all I'm doing here. Again, that's why I show you sources and stuff and urge you, don't believe me. See that truth will not has no defense by doing a little bit of research yourself and seeing how it correlates in your life if it does and how you can use it. That's the true benefit of knowledge, is its use. Why would you deny it?
Nothing new under the sun. Why are you trying to change everything by adding things to the record that shouldn't even be put? In other words, or other parts of the world have a duty not to be dummy directors. Independent directors who step into these situations involving essentially a fiduciary oversight of assets in other parts of the world have a duty not to be dummy directors.
See, and that's the importance of that motor vehicle operator's lease and understanding the capacity you enter into when you sign such agreements. See, you're becoming like an independent director in that situation, but the finalization of the contracts aren't fully realized, and there are elements that are missing. And in that proves that something's in error. If you can go back and correct it, then correct it. But if you can't, you run across an impossibility, and that relieves all parties. And that's what we're talking about here. There's an impossibility for me to be using Federal Reserve notes in case you don't get it.
In other words, they don't have any beneficial interest in the direction, but again, merely just as holders.
That tells me there are probably many other things that I'm not supposed to be using. So I did my research, and guess what? That seems to be profoundly true throughout all jurisdictions. Not my job. I'm not going to be the one sitting there saying I'm just doing my job. And despite you just doing your job for your public service and that public trust, I will still go above and beyond what you do. Again, the truth needs no defense, and I will shove it right down your throat. Act like a big boy and big girl and just accept it open-mindedly so we can all grow together instead of trying to be retributive and put people down because you don't agree, because you don't know how to go beyond your belief system. See, that cognitive dissonance keeps people pretty comfortable, and it's sad.
They are to follow the law as it is, as set, already. Handle the documentation. You don't reach outside of that documentation and start taking people's shit. In another case in Australia in 2018, a baker was made director of two companies, a horse training business and an Indian restaurant, to pony up the cost of hiring solicitors for help with his business. The solicitor business was later found to have evaded taxes to the tune of $100 million. Interesting stuff, huh, folks? Check the room here real quick. And again, I see I don't have a whole lot of viewers, but again, nobody wants to come up on panel, and this is discouraging, guys. I need people to come up on panel. So again, if you're not hitting that like, share, and subscribe, you're failing in your duty. Just saying, folks. I need to like, share, and subscribe to get the message out. Not for me, but for the message, so it helps more people. So let's look at this. What is a shell corporation? How it's used, examples, and legality. So now we're going to break down a little bit of the different uses and the legality as it relates to the ethical standards and morality and equity. A shell corporation is a corporation without active business operations or significant assets. So when you're taken into these courts as a administrative process, and they're converting the use of the name and address and converting the record for their beneficial use, again, as a benefactor, it's a predetermination that as a benefactor, you wouldn't put something out that wouldn't come back to you. Again, scripturally, you put something out positive out, so it should come back to you positive. So as a benefactor giving to the beneficiary, as that term is, those terms are equated, the beneficiary then turns around, and because there's a benefit availed, it now comes back to you. In the meantime, the holder doesn't receive a benefit. He receives a compensation for the time that he held the asset, the property. And the holding that property is just a mentality of knowing that there's a jurisdiction of possession, and they hold a title, a legal title, that says somebody holds that in their possession, and consequently, they too have a subsequent document known as a certificate title, that they can also act as a director, and given certain knowledge, they can give a direction for that merger and resurrection of a new name. And that's all it takes. Again, and these types of corporations are not all necessarily illegal, implying that they are illegal in a sense, but not all of them. There is a way to equate them as legal, but again, that legal equation is by its use. Again, we're in a usufruct position for a system, and the usufruct is dependent upon the property, the physical assets, and things like that, and not the fictional elements as they're described in documentation that records those possessions.
And that qualified signature, as we've been speaking about lately.
But they are sometimes used illegitimately, illicit, I-C-it, that spell of illness. The establishment. In the establishment, if it's false, then it cannot stand. It sits, and therefore you need to leave it sitting where it's at. Walk on by, step on it, leave your footprint on it if you want. Such as to disguise business ownership from law enforcement or public.
And that means yourself as well. Like I said, as we've recently discussed, a United States business means a United States citizen. So if you're saying you're a United States citizen, you're saying that you're a United States business. Are you really? Do you have a charter? Do you have a permit to do business in the United States as a United States business? You know, federal government means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service and the Postal Regulatory Commission, which would technically be the true title holder if the United States Postal Service is the trustee. Wouldn't that be like an escrow agreement, since they're both operating in a public service trust globally?
These types of corporations are not all necessarily illegal, but they are sometimes used illegitimately. And like I said again, it's a usufruct system, and they are using it illegitimately to disguise the court business and the true ownership from yourself, the only one that can actually enforce. If you want equity, you must first bring equity, and that is the knowledge that's destroying you because you don't have it. Once you gain that knowledge, you can start picking the pieces up, putting them together as they're meant to be. Legate, innate, legitimate reasons. You have to put the work into it, and it is I, no one else, singular. That's you. Both you and your person, your character in all of its traits has to do all of the work in all of the venues in order to make sure it is legitimate in all of those venues. Legitimate reasons for a shell corporation include such things as startup, using the business entity as a vehicle, to raise funds, conduct a hostile takeover, or go public, to raise funds.
Notice how it says use the business entity as a vehicle. Okay? Remember the lingua franca, the ability to bring two culturally different people with two culturally different languages together with a individual language that both can understand. Lingua franca. And it's known as a vehicular language, so that they can convey their thoughts back and forth. That's simple, folks. That's all it takes to define vehicle.
A vehicle to raise, comma. A vehicle to resurrect, a means to resurrect, a path to resurrect. This is that development. It's a developmental phase. What is a shell corporation? It's implied and presumed to be a developmental stage until it is actually recognized. As it said earlier, dummy corporation is one that's not seen, but known to be existing somewhere. And it's going to be recognized one day. That's the established principle, that it will act in the legal system, whether it be illegal or legal.
And that would be the same thing as building or collecting assets.
Understanding a shell corporation. Shell corporations are used by large, well-known public companies, shady business dealers, and private individuals alike.
Private individuals. See, so there's a lot of presumptions that we need to beat in here, and that's simply, again, know thyself. I'm not any corporation. That's merely a representation. What's it representing? Or United States business.
And then the businesses are at
So-
war, Keith. Take a look at the names. Shell Corporation. We have Target. We have, remember, mobile gas stations.
Yep. Yeah, it's all the, what do they call it? Subliminal messaging, propaganda, symbolic languages. Everything is geared towards a mentality of controlling one's desires and wants. Everything's materialistic. What's under the shell? Do you remember which shell had the bean under it? Are you good enough to keep track? Why are you keeping track? Why are you keeping a record? If any record, it should still just be the same message over and over, right? If that's the true concept, is to pass on the message and don't worry about the messenger. It almost sounds like we should all be living the same life anyway. I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe that's
We
just
should be, I think. Yeah.
It's well known that it's used in shady business deals. For example, in addition to the legal reasons above, shell corporations act as tax avoidance vehicles for legitimate businesses, as is the case with Apple's corporate entities based in the United Kingdom. They are also used to obtain different forms of financing.
So, just like I pointed out with this last charge that I had dismissed, failure to appear for jury duty, they turned around and sent me a document saying that the costs are taxed to the defendant.
What?
Oh yeah, sounds like a tax avoidance scheme to me, right? I didn't bring up these charges, and they admit that they don't apply to me, but they're going to turn around and tax the cost to the defendant. How did you get personal jurisdiction of the defendant? There's no waiver of personal jurisdiction on the record, and you did in fact send a summons that at first you did a diligent search and it was returned. Second, after I noticed it and I appeared before or showed up in the court on a special appearance to make note of the mistakes and errors that somebody put a bench warrant out with zero finances, zero charges, no long title, this and that, no bond was found, yet they still were urged to place a bond. And it was the extension of the very judicial officer, Angela Dreyer, from the Blackhawk County Courthouse. So she is the judicial officer, and she herself put that out. That's executor des entorts. She didn't have personal jurisdiction to make such executive determination and then make a tax issue out of it. That's violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Congress shall lay in to collect taxes, duties, and imposts and excises. So here she's made a tax claim in a probate court and then claims that she had personal jurisdiction to do so. So now I've got a documentary evidence of a tax scheme that I'm going to hand over to the IRS. Oops. I don't care if it's only $350 bond. It's the door to show that if they're so knowing of the law and can make this kind of a mistake, then I require a forensic audit of the other 93 cases. Motherfuckers. Excuse my language. They do and will trip themselves up with their own damn communications. You just got to be smarter than them. You just have to be more patient. Be willing to give everything up. Because now that I have nothing to lose, I have everything to gain.
5 U.S.C. 301, departmental regulations, when they talk about agencies and the plain writing of the minimum birth registration requirements, and all these other agencies and their different forms of requiring subsidies that they then place on the record and get like funding from the United States. But don't.
And again, that's that first entrance by the birth clerk at the hospital. That's the original financing instrumentality. That's what finances everything. If it doesn't go through that birth clerk at the local hospital, it would have to go through another clerk. That's the first clerk it goes through.
Proclaim any liabilities However, tax avoidance is sometimes seen as a loophole to tax evasion, as these corporations have been known to be used in black or gray market activities. It's natural to be suspicious of a shell corporation, and it's important to understand the various scenarios in which they rise.
Remember that gray zone we spoke about yesterday? Here we have that black and gray market activities. They know exactly the different languages that they use in this stuff, and it's telling us. 50 Shades of Gray, them gray market activities. There's gray areas. Well, he may or may not be a resident, he may or may not be a United States citizen. But he seems like a likable guy, so go ahead. Yeah. Looks like that ID is all right.
Remember the
Reasons to legitimately
Incredible Hulk episode back in the 70s? There was a whole episode, Keith, where David Banner was not the Hulk, but he wasn't the real man either. Remember that one?
No,
He was like a
my.
half and half creature.
Oh, okay, yeah, he had a hard time coming in and out.
Yeah,
He
right.
remained kind of stable,
Yep,
but it
that's
wasn't.
it.
He was centrally balanced. It was almost like having a central balance between the two. Coincidentally, yeah.
set up a shell corporation. The number one reason for domestic companies to set up a shell company is to realize a tax haven abroad.
And that's that import document to Puerto Rico, Panama Canal, the offshore, that's creating a tax haven because you don't know how it's being done. You've never been taught this stuff. Again, that's why I urge you, don't believe me, don't believe the neighbor, don't believe the government, for crying out loud. Don't believe your mother. Do your research so you know, because nobody's telling you this. I've said many times, my mother worked for the United States government all of her life. She worked for the Ames lab in Ames, Iowa, as a research analyst for the first part of her life. And then she got pregnant and had a little boy, so she took a few years off. And before that, I guess she also worked for the federal government as a real estate appraiser with my dad. And then after she had the baby and took a few years off, she worked for the Social Security Administration for the rest of her life, retired after like 29 years. And I guarantee you, she never once read the Social Security Act. And my dad was, like I said, a real estate appraiser for the government all of his life. And I guarantee you, he doesn't know the first thing about Residential Reformation Act or anything about that, how the taxes are applied. And that necessarily the only reason that he should be making a tax assessment on any property is if there's a business there. So despite the fact that they both were supposedly very great intellectual people that work for the federal government, this is why I say, how can we have a strong government? How can we have a strong nation if the reading comprehension itself is only about 7th or 8th grade? And then after they get out of high school or do certain kind of training to say work for the government, they don't expand upon that education any further because they think they know everything they need to know because they just listen to the government. They're just doing their job. My grandparents were immigrants from Germany, exiled from their own country after World War II. Over 10 million Germans were expatriated out of the country so they could repopulate it with good-hearted people. So a large portion of them came to the United States of America. My grandparents were a couple of them. I come from very heinous roots of the very people perpetrating what we're doing today back in World War II, Hitler's actual willing executioners. They were just doing their job. They didn't stand up against the atrocities. They saw some kind of division and thought that division was somehow worth the genocide. There is something still very seriously wrong with the hearts and minds of all men these days. In my opinion, of course.
A tax haven abroad. The only reason you would need a tax haven is if you are in a foreign area, foreign nation.
Wherein taxes are applied to the foreigners. See, why do you tax your own people? You don't. You tax the foreigners that want to come in and take advantage of the natural resources for their profit. So you have them give forth a little tithe. They're the ones going to export it out of your country into their country so that they can merchant it there.
For native, for natural, it goes
in their tax haven.
By your production. Again, that cup is full, then it wells over. If it's not, then they cannot exact it from you. Okay. Large corporations, like in the Apple example, have decided to move jobs and profits offshore, taking advantage of looser tax codes. This is the international tax stuff that I was talking about here in the past year recently in regards to the Royal Warrant Holders Association and the international contracting. You have a right, even as a domestic corporation, to outsource your actual manufacturing or whatever services or whatever somewhere else, just like you have the ability to outsource with the name alone. This is the process of offshoring or outsourcing work that was once conducted domestically. So when you outsource the name to another country, what you're doing is you're outsourcing the record and it's keeping, it's holding. You're investing in a different holder in due course, according to the course of the operations in that foreign jurisdiction and not the domestic one. This is common practice, and this is why I keep urging you to quit going to those administrative courts and outsource it, go offshore. Quit dealing with that domestic bullshit that isn't domestic. It's a fraud. To remain within legal bounds internationally, American corporations will set up shell companies in foreign countries. That's to protect
And the only domestic entity for those administrative courts, again, like I said before, Texas Rule of Civil Procedure, you have to have a board of governors, or excuse me, board of directors in order to hire an attorney. And that's a corporate capacity.
the American corporation. Again, very wise. So when you do the merger and do it in a new name, you transfer that title to the International Judicial Office. And now it becomes hidden. Recognized as an American corporation, whether established for...
I don't know why it got all blurry. Let me try to reset this. We're at 139, 126.53.
It go offshore. Quit dealing with that domestic bullshit that isn't domestic. It's a fraud. To remain within legal bounds internationally, American corporations will set up shell companies in foreign countries. That's to protect the American corporation. Again, very wise. So when you do the merger and do it in a new name, you transfer that title to the International Judicial Office. And now it becomes hidden. Recognized as an American corporation, whether established, fully organized or not, it's in development and needs protection. Following right along with the corporate laws as an establishment in an international trust account. In the foreign countries in which they are offshoring work, this is legally allowed by the United States, and some say that is the U.S. tax code itself that's forcing domestic companies to create shell company corporations abroad. The next session, open a new bank account. Another way that shell companies help with taxes surrounds the need for financial institutions to conduct financial activity in foreign markets. This allows them to invest in capital markets outside of domestic borders and realize potential tax savings. Because,
in other words, they have to go to foreign markets and either invest in those foreign products or foreign currencies. It's an investment. And remember that term investment is a creation of money.
the more you invest in outside corporations from your own corporation, even if they are domestically situated on the American continent, they are still foreign from yourself. So the wise investment is investing in a domestic American corporation that is still a foreign investment, and both companies having their records held foreign. Therefore, both American companies help protect each other by following the same standard and enforcing the same laws. Ways that people abuse shell companies. Even though there are legitimate reasons to set up a shell company, many wealthy individuals abuse shell companies for personal gain. Progressive taxation within the United States, that is tax brackets, slowly cause people to seek personal tax havens. Significantly, high earners set themselves up as shell companies in one or many locations. So what happens is we have people that become privy to this knowledge and they start setting up their shell corporations, and we end up with more shell corporations, but they're taking advantage of the profits of the losses.
And again, this is another venue where that very concept, and I don't know why my video keeps going out like that, but I'll just deal with it here. But this is another one of those examples of showing how, just like it says, the law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions, and why it's important to do your research and see how things correlate in different venues. This is another thing that correlates with a authors guild, where you have multiple pen names that you can create yourself, or even have multiple pen names by multiple people that join together in a group to do your own journaling to protect each other's works. So the creation of multiple little shell corporations, like they said, may seem illegal. There are a lot of places where they are illegal, or are legal, and so you can set up a number of them and use them to protect each other. Again, it's a matter of learning how to direct the routing and stuff and do things legally is fine, as long as you know what you're doing. Otherwise, like I said earlier, I wasn't qualified to be doing the stuff I was doing. I was supposed to be handing it over to somebody else that knew what they were supposed to be doing, and just let them know, hey, I'm the benefactor, so if anything goes wrong, I'm going to be screaming. I know what I'm supposed to be receiving.
the other companies that don't have these taxes or tax rates or don't know them, and so they pay into that system. 98% of the income taxes are paid voluntarily. That means 2% somewhere along the line is taking advantage of the profits of the loss of other men. This is a gray area of tax evasion where people funnel earnings through shell companies in such a way that it is counted towards personal income. When you go to McDonald's, guys, ladies and gentlemen, and fill out that employment application, I can almost assure you, don't take my word for it, do your own research and find out for sure, but I can almost assure you that they're using you both as an investor and taking out an insurance claim against you. And it's all based on personal income because they're considering you as an investor who's investing in their company and not actually an outside source that's earning a fee for their a compensation fee for their services. You're actually being considered an investor. Tax avoidance is a legal way to limit tax. Tax evasion is not. There's a difference between avoidance and evasion. Avoid. It's already void. It's already void on its face, folks. All you have to do is give it avoidance. And people insist on giving it credit. That's just dumb. Take a peek real quick. US 15 U.S.C.U.N.T.S. in regards as it relates to the Clayton and Sherman antitrust laws. Every contract combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal. And that's what I'm saying, that enumeration at birth is the illegal formation of a trust. Again.
See, and that's the formation of a trust that's got you named in the capacity of a trustee. That's what the assignment of the number is about. That you're going to be taking upon trustee duties.
But see, that's what makes it amazing, Keith, is that the Social Security never even asks who the benefactor is. They never explain like what the field agent is supposed to do, which is what I'm now calling us, you know?
Yep.
So it's like a big black hole.
Yeah, and that's why I say that's the thing that's severely wrong with the public education system. If you really think they intend to bring you up so that you know this stuff so you can control your own accounting and do your own directing, then why isn't it working that way? Why is it we have a general population reading comprehension of about 7th or 8th grade? And it shows even in a lot of our public officials that we're putting in these offices and stuff, a lot of the people that have greater ranks in the wealth and stuff where they get to finagle things with that little bit of wealth, and they don't even have the reading comprehension themselves of what they're actually doing. And a lot of times it could come to bite them in the ass. And it's what I keep urging everybody. Stop playing along with that game. We're all big boys and girls, and there comes a point in time where you just cannot deny, and you have to admit that truth needs no defense. In that, you have to become qualified to accept that truth and do your due diligence to stop letting this shit happen. Quit being Hitler's willing executioners. That's truly the action speaking louder than their words. So when somebody sits there and tells me I'm just doing my job, I almost gag and puke all over them.
In the scripture, Psalms 118 verses 8 through 11 tells you to place your trust in no man. That fictional name, that nom de guerre, that's not Jacob of Israel, is a false giving. It's a false grant. It's a false directive. It's leading you astray. It's leading you into the war. It's got you ranting about war rants. And you're literally issuing your own battle of the forms. You're in your own battle. Quit it. Come out of her. The next one. This is just to show you again the correlation with the legal definition. This is uslegal.com. And just like we read from the Black's Law 4th edition, which is what they use in the courts, is the Black's Law definitions. They are still quite familiar with the 4th edition, which is the inherent conversion from common law to equity. And then they've got their modern conversions. I believe they've got the 11th edition in print now. But they correlate all the same, just like wording. A dummy corporation or dummy company is an incorporated firm created to serve as a front or cover for one or more companies.
So that legal name, known as Keith Little on the Social Security card, because the middle name has no consequence, is then a cover, a front or cover for one or more companies that are represented by LITT, KEITH, LITTLE, comma, KEITH, or ORLAND in all uppercase. K uppercase, lowercase EITH, uppercase O, lowercase RLAND, uppercase L, lowercase ITTLE, all different kinds of styles. So the one name is a front for the other styles. Just like a dummy corporation. It's uniform throughout the jurisdictions. It's uniform. It permeates every aspect
It helps to hide the identity of its principal or principals, or to shield them with the limited liability protection provided by a corporation. And again, that limited liability protection, like I said, as it relates to the holder of the instruments, the creators of the instruments, and the United States taking liabilities and obligations to the full extent under 18 U.S.C. 7 as a special maritime territorial jurisdiction of their administrative courts, 18 U.S.C. 8, the obligations and other securities of those administrative documentations using those signatures as the securitization, and all of those documents being vessels of the United States under 18 U.S.C. none. I don't care if it comes from the state or not. The state is an instrumentality of the United States by ceding their jurisdiction to the United States successively. Dummy companies may appear to be real, but it lacks the capacity. Remember we talked about that figurehead? The cap is on the top of the head. Cap a city. That is the mayoral form of government. The oral may. You may. But again,
it lacks the capacity to perform or to function independently. And this is, again, that correlates to that board of directors that does all the voting and stuff for or on behalf of the non-member. It's uniform, folks. They're saying the same thing throughout, just using different words.
It's orally given. You orally verbalize everything you do in life, written or spoken. That's that core oration, the body oration. Core does not mean dead, it means body. So your capacity, are you protected by the helmet of salvation? Can you be the redeemer? Can you salvage another man? Can you salvage your own man? Can you bring resurrection? Can you merge that man with your true character and bring a good light to it instead of hiding it in the shadows of 93 cases? The main intention of creating such companies is to conceal true ownership and or avoid taxes. So when you go into the court and they ask you, are you Keith Little? No, I am the true owner of Keith Little. And by bringing me into this, public venue, you have just violated or partaken in the violation of your very contracts and trusts. However, where an individual sets up corporation for the primary person of insulating him or her from liability, a court might, under the most egregious of circumstances, declare the entity a dummy corporation and expose the shareholder personally. So when you sign up for SS5, which is a form of liability,
And I urge you to go ahead and do that. That's what the birth certificate's all about. You're exposing that you are the shareholder personally. You're the one that's holder of the instrument, and it's your goddamn name. And I said goddamn name because it's a person. He's no respecter of persons. And since you're a redeemer, you get to redeem him. You get to resurrect and merge him into a new name. It's uniform throughout all jurisdictions, and it comes from the Most High first.
So now all you have to do is recognize that you're a shareholder, and you're a shareholder because you hold that certificated instrument, that Social Security card. Look at what kind of paper it's printed on. That certificate, heavyweight paper. It is certificated, and you can enforce this certification by ordering. Yes, that's an order, and giving them a fee for their services for conducting the acts of sending a birth certificate, of which has your name and a number on it that you can flip over and give a further directive, ordering a further or giving a further order to settle all the accounts according to that accounting and extensions thereof.
And so, since I extended the credits in that documentation, and I have evidence of it by a receipt caused by, which was issued by a commander, that receipt now serves to provide the spoliated owner with indemnification. Article 38 of the Libra Code. I now have in my possession, holder in due course of private property. Evidence is documentary on the form that there is full faith and credit by the seal, and that full faith and credit is to be an extension to the corporate entity named on that document or in that document, and I get to sign it as authorized representative unambiguously, and therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument.
So that no person shall be held liable in any court. That's all you're doing is you're taking care of the liability. That's all you got to do. Pick up the ball and run with it. Know which way to run, which way is your end goal, and know that there's nobody else going to stop you. Nothing stops the truth, and that's all you got to do. That is the true hot ball of the game. You know which one's hot. You catch a ball and it's cold, you ain't got much of a hurry to get to the end zone. If it's cold, you can hold it forever, and that's your problem. You keep holding on to the fake ball. Pick up that hot one, run to the end zone, and deliver that fucker. Resurrection in a new name. Howard Madden. Funny how we're talking about football.
See, they literally tell you a court might, under most egregious of circumstances, declare the entity a dummy corporation and expose the shareholder personally. So again, it's one of those things in this damned language, and like I said, it's beautiful if you learn how it's used. They're actually hiding the fact that that's the very thing you need to do. Expose the dummy corporation for what it is. It's a tax haven.
They get it
Yeah.
out of the wrong hands.
Right. And its primary purpose is for insulating from liability. And that's my intent by my signature, without recourse, without prejudice, and by benefactor.
That would do it, yeah.
I don't know who the 0% is, but Howard Madden says this sounds exactly like what the 0% teaches. I'm just listening to it at work, and then I come home and hear this. I'm glad it's the same message, and I hope it's reporting a positive message. So anyway, I gave everybody a lot more to.
And that's it for that. And what we're looking at there, I gave an example before, and if we had a third person up here, I'd give it again, but we can do it without a third person just by presuming there's a third person. So Nude Guru is going to be our third person. Yep, the boogeyman can have all the liability. Keep blaming the boogeyman, folks. So, Nude Guru owes John $10. John owes me $10, and I owe Nude Guru $10. I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to give Nude Guru the $10 I owe him. He's going to be kind enough and appreciate that he's got everything he needs today, so he's going to go ahead and pay one of his debts, and he's going to pass that $10 on to John. John, being of like kind, he's going to do the exact same thing and pay that debt on to me. We all three just cleared our debts, and everybody's still got the same amount of money in their pocket. How does that work?
So no net gain, or net loss. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, zero loss. There's zero there, guys. When you think about it in a logic process, think of what you're doing. You're posing a debt that really doesn't exist, because we all technically owe no man anything but to love one another. For to love one another is to fulfill the law. So anything that charges a debt against a man is not the law. What is it? Does it require surety? He who is sure hateth suretyship. This is why I say, don't believe me. Don't believe the neighbor. Don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your research so you know. Go ahead.
They could do it, Keith, if he's a corporate slave. That's what, that's the whole trick here, right?
Well, yeah, that's the dummy part of it. You have to be dumb enough to not realize it. And I was dumb enough to not realize it until I was about 50 years old. Even my mom and dad, after being retired, were still acting like a dummy corporation. Keith, the police are your authority. How can you live your whole life believing that when you raised your children up as Christians?
Yeah, that's a really good question for the Christian families. I was raised Catholic, but not very strictly. So I had, I'll just say average parents, but.
Yeah. Well, with that, folks, we are at the end of our stream. I appreciate everybody's support. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal button down there for anybody that would care to share some love. It's always appreciated, every little bit. In the meantime, you got anything else on the way out, brother?
Nope. Another good one.
Thank you kindly. All glory goes to him. And with that then, folks, you know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. Let's say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you, and have a good night, everybody. Bye now.